This fly I'm about to tie is a little yellow Sally pattern that I developed. I call it Biggie's Yellow Sally. All my friends refer to me as Biggie. That's a long story, but we won't go into it now. But this is a yellow Sally pattern, which yellow Sallies are a little small stonefly nymph or dry fly that I love to fish. It's one of my favorite insects. They're really pretty and very delicate, and the fish really love eating them if you're on the right place at the right time. So we're going to start off here with a dry fly hook. Standard shank hook. You can use the Tiemco 300 or no, not the 300, the Tiemco 100 or the Dairiki 305. This is a downturn eye. You can also use the straight eye if you would like. We're going to attach some thread here. The thread I'm using today is UTC 70 denier in kind of a grayish color. So we're going to attach this onto our hook. And yellow Sallies all have a little sac on their abdomen that can be different colors. Usually it's kind of a reddish color, and their bodies will run all kinds of different shades from yellows to lime greens. You'll find a lot of different shades. So we're gonna, that yellow or that red sac on the back is fairly prominent and something that I think that you need to have on most yellow Sally patterns and something you'll see on most yellow Sally patterns. So we're gonna start by tying in a little tail here. This is micro chenille. Ultra chenille, which is the same stuff that's used for a San Juan worm. So we're going to take a little chunk of this. We're going to lay it on top of the hook shank. We're going to do our pinch wraps here to make sure we get it secured right on top. And I'll hold it back and I'll wrap this right back to where the bend and the straight part of the hook meet, or right where if you hang that thread down, it should hang right about on the barb. And that'll tell you you're right on the right place. Then I'm going to wrap forward just to keep an even body on this. I'm going to wrap right over that ultra chenille and get it tied down about 2/3 of the way up the hook. Then I'll trim it off. What this will allow me to do is keep an even edge and an even size diameter on this hook so that when I tie on the rest of my body, it's all symmetrical and even. Then you'll come off the back here and you're just going to trim this off and just leave a small little red tail. If you'd like to, you can also burn this so it gets it a little nicer edge, and that'll make that little red sac on their back of their abdomen that's so prevalent in yellow Sallies. Now we're going to take some dubbing, and you can vary up this coloring. This ice dub has been pretty popular on a lot of flies these days. It's got a little sparkle and flash that definitely catches the fisherman's eye. I think the fish eat it fairly well too, but a lot of fly tying you're tying as much to impress the other fishermen as you are the fish sometimes, because that's kind of why they call it the art of fly tying. So for all practical purposes, we're just going to go ahead and put this on here. And this stuff is very sparkly and very bright. It adds a lot of flash to the fly. On a bright sunny day, this will give off a lot of reflection, which you're going to get from natural insects a lot of time because they do get quite a bit of sheen on them. So we're going to take this, and there again, we're going to use just very sparse amounts because I can always come back and add dubbing. When you're using lighter colors of dubbing like this, it's a good idea always to wash your hands first, because the first few times you put this on, it can discolor that light colored dubbing. So good clean hands are a good thing when you're going to do a lot of dubbing work. So we're going to go ahead and attach this and get a real fine noodle on here. And all we're going to do is start here at the back. We're going to try and give this a slight cigar taper to it, but it doesn't have to be. As long as it's fairly even, it looks good. So we're going to have this up about 2/3 of the way up the hook shank. Now our next step is we're going to tie our wing onto this, and this wing is going to be a 2-step wing. And the main reason is because I'm going to put on this polypost material, which is a winging material. And what this is going to do is typically you're going to see these yellow Sallies hatch on real bright sunny days. And this white color is going to really stand out and be easy for the angler to pick up and see the fly. When I tie a lot of my dry flies, I think it's very important that you keep the fly very visible to the angler, because you're fishing on top, and part of the reason of fishing on top is you want to see that fish come to the surface. So if you don't know where your fly is, you might as well not be fishing a dry fly. So this is going to aid you in seeing the fly on the water a lot easier. So we're going to take a piece of this poly yarn, we're going to lay it on the hook, we're going to stick it straight out of the eye of the hook. And you're going to wrap that poly yarn or parachute yarn right up to the eye of the hook. And you want to get this right up to the eye because we're going to end up pulling this back in a bullet head fashion, which is going to give us our nice tapered head. So then you're going to come in and we're going to trim off this excess on the back here and leave this hanging out top. Now this is going to be the last material we pull over the top, so we want it to be tied on first. Anytime you're tying something that's going to have multiple steps, whatever's going to be wrapped last gets tied on first. Now we've got some, this is just a deer hair. This is the same hair you use for tying ex-caddis. It's a very fine fibered hair, and this is going to, we're just going to take a clump of it. We'll trim off a small clump of the hair, and we're going to take a small clump of this hair, and in any deer hair or elk hair or antelope, any of that stuff, it's going to have a real fine under fiber, so you're going to want to pull on it. And you're going to lose some fibers to it, which is just fine, but you want to get all that under fur out of there, because that under fur is going to create bulk and get in the way you're tying. Plus the under fur is what gives them their insulation, which will also soak up some water and make this fly a little less floatable. Then we're going to stick this hair into a hair stacker, and we're going to stick it tips down. What this is going to do is even up all of our hair. A couple of quick little taps. You don't need to pound on it like you're trying to hammer a nail in, because I see a lot of people sit there and keep beating on it, but you only need a couple taps. You turn it right on its side, and you'll have all your hair tips nice and even on the end. So you're going to take and pinch it, pull it right out of that stacker. Pull off any little excess hairs. Then you want to measure this against your hook shank. And you want this to be a little bit longer than the shank of the hook, because you're going to fold it back and you want it to extend out by that tail. So you want those tips and that tail to be about the same length. And we're going to come on up front, and we're going to tie this right in the front, sticking right off the front. I do a couple of loose wraps, then I'll slowly pull to get that really secured onto the top of the hook right there. Then I'll try and bundle all these fibers up and make sure that I get those tied on right up by that eye of the hook. And if you have any stray fibers, now's the time you come in and trim all this stuff right off. Then go ahead and wrap your thread and get all this covered up real good. And you're going to bring your thread right back to about that 1/3 point of the hook. Now we can take this little bundle of deer hair fibers, and we're going to pull this backwards right on top and make a nice wing. I'm going to go ahead and take a couple wraps on it and tie it down, and that gives us kind of a bullet head and gives us our wing sticking out the back. Now you could tie that fly just like that, but it would be pretty tough to see it on the water, so that's why we're putting this white material on top. Now I'm going to pull that over in the same fashion, tie it down, then we can come in and we're going to trim this off to about the same length as our wing. And what this will do is give us just a little fuller wing, plus now you've got this big bright white wing. It's going to be a lot easier to see than it would be if it was just that kind of natural colored deer hair that's on there. Now you could fish this fly just like this just fine, but I like to put a couple sets of rubber legs on it to kind of stabilize it, kind of outriggers. And I'm going to use silly legs is what they're called, pumpkin and black flake. And then really all they are is they're just a bass skirt. This is the same thing they use on putting onto spinner blades for bass fishing. So we're going to take one of these. We're going to cut a chunk, and you're going to lay one on the back side here. Tie that in so you kind of get an X there. Put one on this near side. Just like this is basically not much different than a good old-fashioned Madam X that's been a very popular pattern that's worked really well. Then I'm just going to take another Bit of dubbing here and just make a little fine noodle just so I can cover up that thread wrap over those silly legs. I'm just going to come in and wrap over that, just give it a nice little collar. Once you get to the underside, the reason I use this gray thread is it really blends in, and I can rotate this right up and under and right onto the eye of the hook to whip finish it up under on the eye. You could also whip finish it right back on this collar where you tied the rubber legs in, but I like to have that bare shank of the hook to make my whip finishes. Again, we'll do 2 little whip finishes here. It's always just a little extra backup to have a second whip finish on there. Trim that off. Then I take and push these rubber legs straight forward, trim them both at the same time just in front of the eye. Then I come back and trim the back legs just about the same length as the tail. And now you've kind of got outriggers on this fly that'll help this fly float flush to the surface and not be on one side or the other. Sometimes you'll need to press down a little bit on this wing just to get it to flare a little bit more, but that'll give you your yellow Sally. We also probably want to finish it off with a little drop of head cement. Put that right on the eye. And there is the finished Biggie's Yellow Sally.